Welcome to Beyond the Call, an i24 podcast. This is our inaugural episode, and I'm Nancy Brightman, Director of Marketing and Engagement, and your co-host. Today, we'll be talking about this new podcast with your host, Gary Blair, President and Chief Engagement Officer at i24. Ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes at a call management firm? Well, even if you didn't, you're in for some fun, some learning, and some great conversations. You'll get a glimpse behind the curtain at i24, meet interesting guests, talk about business challenges and inspirations, leadership, and maybe even art. Where's that coming from? Stay tuned to find out. And now it's time to introduce Gary Blair, President and Chief Engagement Officer at i24. Hey, Gary.
Hey, Nancy.
So tell me, how does it feel to be hosting your own podcast?
It's a completely new experience for me. I'm thrilled about the opportunity. People who know me know I love to talk. Oh, yes.
No.
Yes, ma'am. And storytell. And what can I say? This is going to give me a much bigger audience sometimes. And a fresh audience.
We're knocking wood here.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Well, it'll give me a fresh audience because some of my audience has heard some of these stories too many times.
No.
Yes.
Come on. Okay. So I have a question for you. First of all, you've been in the business for 40 years, if I'm allowed to say that. I would love for you to give us a little bit of history about i24, just from the beginning. How did it all get started? Why call management?
Wow, it's shocking to hear 40 years. But sure, yeah, let me tell you a little bit about i24. It's a family business. I'm third generation. This is a firm that was opened in 1970 by my paternal grandmother and by my parents. And my grandmother had worked in the trade for many, many years. She's French-Canadian. She was very, very family-oriented. And for her, family was first, family was second, and family was third. And so at the age of 64, she, in a conversation she had with a friend one day, she said, I'm too young to retire. And the only thing that I haven't been able to do for my family so far that I've always wanted to be able to do is create a financial legacy for them. So she thought, hey, why retire? Why not start a business? She pestered my dad, who was already quite well entrenched in his career.
And his career was?
His career was in radio. He started in sales, in insurance, and then he moved into radio sales, and then he became a sales manager. And then eventually went on to become general manager. And so my grandmother, who had this great idea, approached my dad, who had 3 young kids at the time. And he was like, Ma, not so sure that I can afford to do this. I got a lot of responsibility that I have to answer for.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, with her persistence, a year later, they decided that they would get into this joint venture together. They did. My dad kept his day job. In fact, he used to sell the service to many of his contacts. He had hundreds, if not thousands, of contacts in the business that he was in, that he had built up. And after 3 years, the business was such a going concern that it was either a matter of selling it because he could no longer manage it on a part-time basis, or take it over entirely and then take it wherever it was meant to go. And obviously, us having this conversation today, the answer to what, his decision was at that point in time. I joined the business directly out of school. I graduated from school, and then I had been working in the business, as is the case in many families, when it's a family business, part-time during school and so forth, and loving learning and loving new experiences and that sort of thing and so forth. And I realized really early on, and I think maybe more on a subliminal basis than a conscious basis, that being an entrepreneur gave you the opportunity to get up every day and reinvent your world.
Right.
And that's what I think compelled me. That's what I really loved about being in business.
Wow. Yeah, I think that it's a really interesting thing that maybe we'll touch on more in another episode. But the fact that your grandmother at the time had that thought, even like that inspiration, that a lot of women of the day probably it wouldn't have occurred to them. It would have been like a crazy idea.
That's because you didn't know my grandmother.
Yeah, clearly. I would have loved to know your grandmother from all the things that I've heard about her. She sounded like such a dynamic woman. And you're a dynamic guy. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, clearly. And, it's kind of interesting to me. How do you relate to some of the things about your grandmother? Because clearly she had a big influence on you. So,
Probably secondary only to my dad. My grandmother was a huge influence on my life. I've often thought to myself that, number one, she had an enormous appetite also for living, for doing, for maximizing everything. For her, everything was special
right.
if you created it special. And I've recognized that her high level of energy also. I mean, starting a business at 64 years old is somebody who,
It's huge.
yeah, it takes a lot of guts, and it takes maybe in certain instances not so much guts because it's just the way that people are, which is really what she was. And my dad was really high energy. I mean, he threw himself into everything that he did. And I've seen it in the lineage. That's very much the
Right.
way that I am. So
Right.
definitely.
So, it's interesting to me because we've had so many conversations about your dad. You often reference your dad in just throughout the day, things that inspired you about him, but we don't often talk about your grandmother and what she's about, except for the fact that she started the business and she had a lot of guts. And it would be really interesting to learn more about your grandmother
Oh, she's a
in this
fascinating
process.
character. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it just occurred to me actually as we're talking that I hear like a lot about your dad. But so, what are some of the things besides the fact that she started a business? What are some of the things that you related to and remember about your grandmother?
Um, she inspired me in a lot of different ways. Probably the most inspirational thing was the fact that you alluded to it earlier. For a woman in those days to be able to open a business, to be able to get out there and be in the business world, to have the courage to even take that on. I mean, she was a woman who never allowed her gender or what was going on in society at the time to influence what it was that she was ultimately going to do. She had so much courage and guts and chutzpah that every time I've
Thank
ever
you for
come
using
up
that word.
every time I've ever come up against a situation where I've sort of thought, should I, shouldn't I, and all the rest of it, I think back on her and I think, what would she do? Like, why would she be intimidated by something like this? And why am I allowing myself to be even having second thoughts, let alone being intimidated by it?
Okay, so you know what? I'm going to make a suggestion from now on. I want to hear more about your grandmother. When we're in meetings and you bring up your dad, and that's great. I love hearing the stories about your dad, but I think everybody would love to get to know your grandmother a little bit more through you because she really was the reason that I24 exists
Oh,
today.
totally.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I find that really interesting. And another thing that I wanted to sort of like shift gears to a little bit, because what I find super interesting about I24 is the people, of course. And I know everybody says that, but at I24, truly the people that work there are kind of very special. So I would love to hear your perspective on that.
In a service business where the business is the people that work there, it is hyper important. I think my job as president is first and foremost is to find the right people for the business. The business aspects of it, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between all businesses, the things that you need to do to keep a business operational, successful, that sort of thing and so forth. But it's, if you really want to stand out in a crowd, especially when you're in a service business, it is the people that are at the front line who are servicing your customers. I used to be one of those people. I used to be on the front line with my clients. I used to answer telephones. I mean, I've been an agent. I've done every job in the company on the way up. I think that's also very important, maybe as a sidebar conversation, because I've never asked anybody to do something that I didn't do myself. So I could fully appreciate with their challenges when they would come back to me. And through my own experiences, I was prepared to be able to coach them because guess what? I've lived it. I've done it. I survived and I've grown as a person as a result of it. So yes, a really smart guy that I know had once said to me, hire slowly, fire quickly. Because when you are looking for people, you really want to take the time. You really want to find the right person for the culture of your business. And when your business is excellence, when your business is truly wanting to serve, to be able to provide value, then you have to find people that share those same values. If you don't, you can train a lot of things. You can take a smart person, you can train them in a lot of things, but you cannot train attitude. It is something that somebody arrives at your doorstep with. And it's probably something that's so formed early in life that the idea that you would actually be able to expand somebody's mindset in that regard and get them to kind of come around,
Right.
it's been my experience that that's just not a possibility. So
Yeah.
for me, whenever a position opens up in the business, we go on an expansion, whatever the circumstances are that we're hiring is so critical, and hiring on every level, because hiring agents who are going to be the front line with our customers' callers is ultimately the starting point experience that anybody, well, I'd say most people have
Right.
when they come into contact with
Well,
i24.
what I find super interesting, because I haven't been with i24 very long. I started in this past August 2024. And what really blew me away is seeing what agents do, as opposed to what my perception was before of what agents do and the type of people they are. And we'll get into culture a little later on, but can you just talk about the agents and what I think is the perception versus the reality of the job that they do? I find it fascinating.
It is fascinating. And it's sort of fascinating because we're in a domain of call center business, but that's a really huge term. And I think that there's a perception. And then people have asked me, what do you do for a living when I meet them and so forth? And I say, I operate a call center. It's sort of the easiest terminology that people would be able to relate and understand.
Yeah.
And then they immediately go to the, oh my God, you run a boiler operation with like, you're calling people and selling them stuff and blah, blah. And I go, oh, no. You're talking about a telemarketing firm.
Yeah.
Call center is where you put a group of people who basically do telephone work together, whether or not it's in an operation like ours, where we're an outsourced center that is handling calls and other communications on behalf of our customers, to any sort of, like idea that you can, you can think about out there.
Right.
And so we're very particular about the people that we are hiring for that position, because we actually are a replacement for an employee in the companies that we respond for, but we're off premises and we're responding for the company because for whatever reason they need us for, they're unable to fill that mandate in-house. And that can be something in the realm of they just got too much call volume in order to be able to handle, or it could be in off hours. I mean, you wouldn't man every operation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you could have calls that come in the middle of the night or weekends or stat holidays or that sort of thing. And so they would hire us for that. But when their customers call, they're calling the phone number of our customer, which is being transferred to us. So it's a completely transparent situation for the caller. And when we respond, we basically are representing the image of the customer. They don't know of
we
of
are
our
their
customer.
image. We are their image.
Totally their image.
And what's fascinating to me is just what they have to do, what the agents have to do. It's not an easy job, and it is not for everybody.
Oh, it is definitely not for everybody. And
I couldn't do it.
No, I couldn't do it either. I mean, I have done it, but I don't know how successful I would be in today's world of doing it. It really takes people who are enormously patient, have high levels of emotional intelligence, because you're dealing in situations. I mean, we have 35 basic verticals, but we have customers outside our verticals that are one-offs that are in all kinds of different domains. But as if, for instance, let's just say if you're answering the line of a customer who's in the plumbing business, you're going to have a certain type of client that are calling this. Unless there's a flood going on, it's not necessarily an emergency. The next call could be a funeral home, somebody calling to talk about their loved one who's just passed away and starting the arrangements and that sort of thing and so forth. So you need to have an enormous amount of flexibility to be an agent. You need to be able to sense almost intuitively where the caller is coming from and then respond in kind.
Right. And I'm really fascinated also by the training that they have to go through. And if I could say this, if it's not too much of a trade secret, I love that every agent has to have a mirror next to them, because the customer can hear how they feel in their voice. So if they are not aware of their manner or their tone or how they're coming across, it could actually hurt the call a lot, right? So having
Oh,
a mirror and
absolutely.
looking at your own face is
Yes.
everything. Like I'm smiling now, and I'm sure the audience can hear my smile, and it's so key. And to hear the training, when I went through the initial training when I started the company, just to understand everything from my perspective as a marketer, I was really blown away by the detail. So if you could talk about that a little bit, I think that would be
Sure.
interesting.
We, a long time ago, started providing mirrors because the whole idea is when we were studying human behavior, the simple fact of the matter is that we speak with the unspoken body language to an enormous degree. I think it's like 80% of a conversation actually is body language, which is one of my great frustrations during COVID was that you couldn't get that sense when you were on Zoom calls, and still to this day post COVID. I just have a really hard time. I like to be in the room with somebody when I'm having a conversation. I miss those days, and
Yeah,
I
so do
understand the
I.
convenience of virtual world, and
Yeah.
and listen, it offers some things that face to face can't, but very challenging. So years ago, we said, when you're working basically with a headset and a computer screen, there's a bit of a disconnect in terms of being able to make eye contact with the customer. You don't have the advantages of body language. You have to be ultra sensitive to cues that you're hearing orally because you have to compensate for that.
Yeah.
And so we thought, well, we certainly can't put our callers on a camera, but we can kind of put our agents on a camera, meaning they can see
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And we tend to show a lot of our emotion in our body language. I mean, the whole idea of somebody crossing their arms if they're kind of like starting to feel uncomfortable in
Yeah.
a conversation. We show most of our emotion in our face, however,
Yeah.
in our facial expressions.
Yeah.
And so the mirror allows our agents to be able to go, oh, I'm looking stressed right
Yeah.
now. I need to kind of
It's probably
be
coming out in my
cognizant of it.
voice.
It's
Yeah.
probably coming out in my service
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that gives me the chance to sort of take that deep breath and sort of sit back and like let your shoulders back and then get more relaxed again.
I mean, that's the part of this business that is so interesting. It really is human to human. It's not just answering a phone, answering a call. And I think that is the biggest misunderstanding that our clients maybe perhaps have about this business. And it is so much about that human interaction, about that relationship building.
Nance, it's totally about relationship building, and it's interesting that you should bring that up in the conversation because we do a lot of work with outside coaches, third party influence, that sort of thing, and so forth. And one thing that one of our coaches has brought to our team started initially with our admin people and our customer service folks is exactly that. So what are you trying to attempt when you have an interaction with a customer? You want to
Right.
be able to first and foremost connect with them as a human being. So you've got two human
Yes.
beings connecting. Once you have that connection, then you can go into securing them, what they're calling about, what their concerns are about, and so forth and so on. At the end of that experience, you basically summarize, you reiterate, you ask them directly, have I been able to satisfy, your needs? Are you comfortable with where we're going with this, and so forth and so on? We've taken it right down to, I mean, when you're dealing with a client, when you're having a longer conversation, you have more of an opportunity to expand on that. But you can do it even in a much briefer interaction with a customer. So for our agents with our clients' callers, we still want to have that connection. You
Yeah.
still want to have the agent
Yeah.
to be able to reach out and through their tone of their voice, through the words that they use and so forth, help the caller understand that
Yeah.
they've been heard, that their concerns are
Being
being
supported.
recorded. You're supporting them. And then in telling them what you're going to be able to do in helping them, you're satisfying them. So it's something which is universal. I mean, it's not, we didn't invent it. It's not rocket science.
But it's not always
good
carried out.
business.
It's not always carried out. And that's the thing that is really interesting to me, because everything that you just talked about, all the values that we extend to our clients, we bring inward and extend it to our employees. And that has been a very refreshing thing for me about the culture of i24, because it is the real deal. I started at this company and I was really struck by the kindness, by the collaboration of everybody, agents, team leads, operations, customer service. I mean, all the departments,
IT.
accounting, IT. Okay, I can't forget anybody, right?
No.
But really, everybody's so kind. And then you have, parties and celebrations that we have on a regular basis, and all of that team building and bonding, and like, I'm just blown away. And it has to just go outward. It's like the values that have been applied to the clients are also part of the culture. And I really mean this, 25 years of experience, at least. I won't say more than that. And
you call me out with 40, but you'll only claim 25.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so refreshing. I haven't seen it. I really haven't. And I know it comes from your leadership style. If you could talk a little bit about that, because everybody knows how down to earth you are.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge to talk about my leadership style in the context of the fact that it's me. It's the way that I am. I'm not sure that it's, I've kind of watched business gurus and listened to them talk about culture and the importance of it and so on and so on. It's just, maybe it's a family thing. Maybe it's just the way that I was brought up. And a little bit of me as an individual. You never had
family businesses.
You never had the experience
toxic families. Okay?
You never had the experience of meeting my mom. And you never, so you're not able to understand that her influence on my life was her humanity. And my father, I learned business from. From my mother, I learned relationships. And I kind of learned along the way through different business experiences that this is good business. It's good living. It's good life. It's humanity, but it's also
like
really, really good business.
You're always the same. I mean, in the sense of, I think it's really important in leadership to have one way of being. You're a great leader and you're a great person, if I may say.
Well, thank you. I'll say the same thing about you. It's in this little mutual admiration society.
A lot of mutual admiration. Oh, it's the Mutual Admiration Podcast.
There you go. Well, it is in this brief moment.
Honestly, and I think that everybody feels it. Everybody knows it. And I'm going to say that is the reason for the culture. And, toxicity and all of the things that plague other businesses just don't have a place at i24.
Comes back to what we were talking before about what I believe is my chief role as the CEO of the company, and that is to find the right people. Right. If you can create a environment where everybody shares those same values, where everybody is just that same way, what more could you ask for in any environment?
Totally agree with you. What would you tell younger Gary at this point in your life and in your career?
Wow, a couple of different things. Actually, a lot of different things. But I would say that if I had to sort of summarize it into maybe the most important thing would be happy. Because when you're happy, when you listen to your inner voice, when you follow your gut instinct, when you stop second guessing yourself, when you live life every day to try and create something better for the world, your family's world, your employees' world, your customers' world, the world in general, there's a happiness that comes along with that. It's just never lose track of what you truly know works out there. It works for you. It's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. And we don't have time today, but we are going to touch on, in another episode, all of the charities that i24 supports and is a part of. And that was the thing we talked about in the intro about art. We won't get into it now, but our audience will come back to learn more about how art and charity are intermingled to create something really important in your life.
Fundamentals.
Very fundamental. So, Gary, how do you feel about this podcast now that we're done? I guess we're done. Yeah, we're kind of done. What do you think?
I'm kind of loving it.
Yeah,
I wasn't really sure at the outset what this was going to feel like. But I'm super stoked.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, this is what we do every day, right? at lunchtime.
Oh, this is what we
sit
do.
in the lunchroom.
Definitely lunch hour.
Beyond the lunchroom. Oh, maybe we should
Yeah.
call it Beyond the Lunchroom.
We should.
So I have a question for you.
Shoot.
I think we should end every episode talking about something that we're personally or professionally, well, that we have personal or professional gratitude for. So I'm going to ask you, and I haven't given you any time to think about this, talk about one thing, either personally or professionally, that you have gratitude for. And I'll do the same.
Wow. First and foremost,
Yeah.
the people in my life, the people in my professional life, the people in my personal life, they make my life. I'm a people person. I feed off of other people. I need people. I am, as I said, I think a little bit earlier, I was like very frustrated during the pandemic. I never, thank goodness, i24 is an essential service. So we were, if we decided that we wanted to be, allowed to continue to be in the office. We practically sent everybody home, but we were about 6 people who, like me, shared that experience of like, I can't work in a little box at home and be disconnected from that energy. I need that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm blessed. I've tried to cultivate, as I was saying, like the right people for the business, but I've certainly done it for my personal life. And yeah, if I were to say, what am I most grateful for? It's people.
Nice. I love it. You have to ask me now.
So Nancy, what are you either professionally or personally most grateful for in your life?
Okay. So right now, the thing that jumps to the top of the list for me is, and it may sound corny, my mom. I'm really, really grateful for my mom. She's 91 years old. She's, knock wood, very, very healthy. She's an amazing person. She's inspired me in my entire life. And that's what I'm thinking about right now.
Well, what can I say? The apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Oh, you're so sweet. I don't want to cry on the first episode. Okay, so I'm going to say to our audience, thank you for joining us. This has been Beyond the Call, an i24 podcast hosted by Gary Blair. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share wherever you've listened and leave a comment. We love your feedback and suggestions. To learn more about i24, look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And be sure to visit our website at i24image.com to learn more about our call management and business solutions. I'm your producer and co-host, Nancy Brightman. Assistant producer, Ariana Giangrande. Technical production, Daniel Moskovich. Until next time,
Bye. Canadian.